What if I told you that a single defense agreement signed just yesterday could trigger the collapse of America's 80-year dominance in global affairs? That Pakistan's nuclear arsenal might soon shield multiple Arab nations under one umbrella? That we're witnessing the birth of a new world order in real time? Because that's exactly what's happening. And if you're not paying attention, you're missing the most significant geopolitical earthquake of our lifetime. The Saudi-Pakistan Defense Pact isn't just another diplomatic handshake, it's a geopolitical nuclear bomb waiting to explode across the established world order. Pakistan's Defense Minister Khawaja Asif just did something that should have every intelligence agency from Langley to Beijing burning the midnight oil. He opened the floodgates, declaring that any nation can join this mutual defense agreement. Let me paint you the picture of what this really means. We're not talking about a simple bilateral deal between Riyadh and Islamabad anymore. We're witnessing the potential birth of a new defense bloc that could fundamentally shatter the balance of power across the Middle East and South Asia. This isn't happening in some diplomatic vacuum. This is happening while Gulf Arab states are questioning American security guarantees like never before, especially after Israel's brazen attack on Qatar last week that left 6 people dead in Doha. Here's where your blood should run cold. Minister Asif didn't dance around the implications. He made it crystal clear that Pakistan's nuclear capabilities would absolutely be available under this pact. We're talking about extending a nuclear umbrella to potentially multiple Arab nations. Pakistan possesses an estimated 170 nuclear warheads, making it the world's 6th largest nuclear power. The idea that this arsenal could potentially protect Saudi Arabia and now possibly other Arab nations fundamentally changes the strategic calculus across multiple theaters of potential conflict. Think about what this means for Iran. Tehran has spent decades building regional influence through proxy groups, missile programs, and nuclear development. Suddenly, they're facing the prospect of a nuclear-backed Arab alliance led by their primary regional rival. This isn't just shifting diplomacy. This is the potential nuclearization of regional rivalries that have been fought through conventional means for decades. Meanwhile, Washington's response reveals contradictions so staggering, they'd be comedic if they weren't so tragic. While Congress pushes through a nearly $6 billion arms sale to Israel, including Apache helicopters, Democrats simultaneously push to reconsider military aid over Gaza famine concerns. The cognitive dissonance is breathtaking. You cannot claim to care about Palestinian suffering while simultaneously approving weapons, shipments that will inevitably be used against Palestinians. What's Israel's response to this growing international isolation? More violence, more threats, more of the same playbook that has failed for decades. Israeli forces have killed at least 14 people in Gaza City in the past 24 hours alone, part of an intensifying campaign that shows no signs of abating. The Israeli military is now threatening what they call unprecedented force and mass evacuations in Gaza City. Let me translate that for you. They're threatening to make an already catastrophic humanitarian situation even worse. The United Nations isn't mincing words either. They're warning that Israel's systematic demolitions in Gaza may amount to ethnic cleansing. When the UN uses language like that, when they invoke terms like ethnic cleansing, the same terminology used for the worst atrocities in Bosnia, Rwanda and Myanmar, that should be a wake-up call for the international community. But instead, what do we see? Business as usual from Washington. Want proof of America's declining influence? The Taliban government in Afghanistan has flat-out rejected American requests to regain control of Bagram Air Base. This isn't just any air base. This is one of the world's largest military installations, strategically positioned near China, and the Americans desperately want it back. But the Taliban said no. Think about the symbolism here. A militant group that was supposedly defeated is now telling the world's most powerful military to take a hike. This rejection is particularly humiliating, because while America spent 20 years and over $2 trillion trying to remake Afghanistan through military force, China is now positioning itself to benefit from Afghanistan's mineral wealth and strategic location through economic partnerships. Beijing has already begun discussions with Kabul about mining rights, infrastructure development, and economic cooperation. It's a masterclass in how to win influence without firing a shot. Speaking of China, their unveiling of the 2025 trade strategy perfectly illustrates how Beijing is playing chess while everyone else plays checkers. While the West remains fixated on military solutions and arms sales, China is positioning itself as the economic engine of future global growth. Their focus on green technology and high-tech exports isn't just about trade. It's about technological dominance in sectors that will define the next century. Solar panels, electric vehicles, advanced semiconductors, artificial intelligence infrastructure. These are the new weapons of economic warfare, and China is building an arsenal that dwarfs anything we've seen before. This brings us to the tense phone call between the U.S. President and Xi Jinping, reportedly focused heavily on Taiwan. The timing of America's decision to stop aid to Taiwan sends mixed messages that perfectly encapsulate American foreign policy confusion. America claims to support Taiwan's democracy while simultaneously cutting off aid. The message appears to be de-escalation, but it's being read in Taipei as abandonment. Back in the Middle East, we're seeing fascinating diplomatic maneuvering that would have been unthinkable just months ago. Hezbollah's leadership has signaled openness to working with Saudi Arabia as part of a united front against Israel. These are organizations that were literally at war with each other just a few years ago. Hezbollah's Iranian backing put them directly at odds with Saudi regional interests. Yet here they are exploring common ground based on shared opposition to Israeli policies. This is what happens when a regional hegemon overplays its hand so dramatically that it actually unites its enemies. For decades, Israeli strategic thinking was based on maintaining Arab divisions, on preventing any unified Arab response. That strategy is now backfiring spectacularly. India, meanwhile, is clearly nervous about these developments. They've urged Saudi Arabia to consider their sensitivities regarding the Pakistan Pact. This is diplomatic language for, "We're deeply concerned about our strategic rival gaining a powerful new ally," and they should be concerned. Pakistan has just potentially gained access to Saudi financial resources, while Saudi Arabia has gained access to Pakistan's nuclear deterrent. From New Delhi's perspective, this looks like a nightmare scenario. While this geopolitical chess game unfolds, the human toll in Gaza continues to mount in ways that should shame every world leader claiming to care about human rights. Every day brings new casualties, new tragedies, new reasons why the current approach isn't working. The international community's inability to stop the killing, provide meaningful aid, or hold anyone accountable for war crimes is a damning indictment of our collective moral failure. What's particularly galling is watching Western leaders express concern about humanitarian conditions while simultaneously approving weapons shipments. It's like watching someone pour gasoline on a fire while expressing deep concern about the flames. The hypocrisy is so blatant it would be comedic if it weren't so tragic. The reality is that we're living through a pivotal moment in modern history. The post-World War II international order is fragmenting. New alliances are forming, and the old rules no longer apply. The Saudi-Pakistan Defense Pact is just one example of how middle powers are taking matters into their own hands, rather than relying on traditional security guarantees from Washington. This isn't necessarily a bad thing. Sometimes existing power structures need to be challenged. Sometimes the status quo serves the interests of the few rather than the many. But change, especially rapid geopolitical change, brings uncertainty and risk. The key question is whether these new alliances will promote stability and peace, or lead to new conflicts and tensions. Looking at the current trajectory, there are reasons for both optimism and alarm. On the positive side, we're seeing countries that share common interests and values finding ways to cooperate. The Muslim world has been divided for far too long, often to the benefit of external powers who prefer a fragmented Middle East they can more easily control. A more unified Muslim bloc could potentially provide a counterweight to both Western and Chinese influence, creating more space for independent decision-making. On the concerning side, we're also seeing the potential for new arms races, new proxy conflicts, and new flashpoints for international tension. When you combine nuclear weapons, religious and ethnic tensions, and rapidly shifting alliances, the potential for miscalculation increases dramatically. The Middle East has seen enough war and destruction. The international community, particularly the United Nations, needs to step up and provide leadership at this critical moment. But instead, we see paralysis, vetoes in the Security Council, and a complete inability to address the root causes of regional instability. The UN's warning about potential ethnic cleansing in Gaza should have triggered immediate international action. Instead, it will likely be ignored, just like countless previous warnings. What's needed now is honest dialogue, genuine diplomacy, and a willingness from all parties to acknowledge past mistakes and chart a new course forward. That means Israel needs to recognize that its current policies are not providing security, but rather breeding more insecurity. It means Arab nations need to move beyond rhetoric and take concrete steps toward peace. It means Western powers need to stop playing favorites and start treating all peoples in the region with equal dignity and respect. The emerging Saudi-Pakistan alliance could be part of the solution if it's used to promote stability rather than confrontation, but that will require wisdom, restraint, and a commitment to dialogue over force. Unfortunately, those qualities have been in short supply in recent years. Let's dig deeper into what this Saudi-Pakistan Defense Pact actually means in practical terms. When Defense Minister Asif talks about Pakistan's nuclear capabilities being available under this pact, he's not making empty diplomatic gestures. The idea that this nuclear arsenal could potentially be extended to protect Saudi Arabia and possibly other Arab nations fundamentally changes the strategic calculus across multiple theaters of potential conflict. Consider the cascade effect this could trigger. If Saudi Arabia feels secure under a nuclear umbrella, they might be more willing to take aggressive stances against Iran. If other Arab nations join this alliance, Iran could find itself increasingly isolated and potentially more desperate. Desperate nuclear powers make dangerous decisions. China's focus on green technology and high-tech exports represents a fundamental understanding that the wars of the 21st century will be fought with economic weapons, not just military ones. While America remains bogged down in military interventions and proxy conflicts, Beijing is building technological dominance in sectors that will define global power for decades to come. This brings us back to the phone call between the U.S. President and Xi Jinping. Sources describe the conversation as tense and focused heavily on Taiwan. The decision to stop aid to Taiwan comes at a moment when Beijing is ramping up military exercises around the island and making increasingly aggressive statements about reunification. This is the kind of mixed messaging that has characterized American foreign policy for years. Tough rhetoric followed by pragmatic retreats that leave allies questioning American reliability. The Taliban's rejection of American requests for Bagram Air Base access represents more than symbolic humiliation. Bagram represents America's entire Afghanistan strategy in microcosm, a massive investment in military infrastructure that ultimately served to project power and maintain regional influence. Without Bagram, American military planners lose a crucial strategic asset in what they see as the great power competition of the 21st century. What makes this particularly stinging for Washington is that the Taliban aren't just saying no to America, they're saying yes to China. While America spent 2 decades trying to remake Afghanistan through military force, China is positioning itself to benefit through economic partnerships. It's a masterclass in soft power projection. Arab publics have watched in horror as Palestinian civilians are killed with American weapons, supported by American diplomacy, and protected by American vetoes in the UN Security Council. The idea that Arab governments might finally have an alternative to American security guarantees represents a seismic shift that goes far beyond traditional geopolitical calculations. This is where the emergence of new defense alliances becomes particularly significant. When longtime enemies like Hezbollah and Saudi Arabia start exploring cooperation, when nuclear-armed Pakistan offers to extend its deterrent to Arab allies, when China offers economic partnerships without military intervention, we're witnessing the birth of a multipolar world order. The ultimate irony is that American foreign policy has created the very conditions for its own decline. Decades of inconsistency, hypocrisy, and military interventions that made situations worse, rather than better, have eroded American credibility to the point where even longtime allies are looking for alternatives. What we're witnessing isn't just the rise of new powers, it's the consequences of American strategic failures coming home to roost. The Saudi-Pakistan Pact is just the beginning. If other Arab nations join, if this becomes a broader Muslim defense alliance, we could be looking at a completely different geopolitical landscape within a matter of years. The question now is whether Washington will recognize these shifting realities and adapt its policies accordingly, or whether it will continue to double down on failed strategies that have already cost countless lives and trillions of dollars. The early signs are not encouraging. Continuing to arm Israel while Palestinian children die, Refusing to acknowledge legitimate security concerns of other nations and maintaining a foreign policy based on threats rather than diplomacy is a recipe for continued instability. Until American leadership demonstrates wisdom, restraint, and genuine commitment to dialogue over force, we can expect more violence, more suffering, and more instability in a region that has already endured far too much of all three. The nuclear domino effect has begun, and the question isn't whether the old order will fall, it's what will rise to replace it.